All right. Looks like we're live here. Perfect. On Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, all the things. This is great. Perfect. Garrett, where are you calling in from today too?
I'm in Reno, Nevada.
There we go. I like it. Awesome. Hi everyone again. Matt Camp with DealMachine. I'm our head of partnerships over here, and really enjoy being able to interview people like Garrett, and I'm very privileged to be able to have access to true like world-class experts like yourself, Garrett. So really excited to have you on today.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to be back. I enjoyed the first one. Looking forward to this one.
Sure. Yeah. I was going to say this will be a special treat today. We're doing something a little different with a kind of a lunch and learn edition. So I'm excited to have people jump on. Feel free to introduce yourself in the comments as well in the chat here. Throughout today, I'm going to keep it interactive, and I'll start off, introducing Garrett here, and then go, throw in questions that you all have as we go along. So we love to have our community chime in, and you're showing up for a specific reason today, so feel free to ask about that. And Garrett here is he's not even billing us for this. It's not even on billable hours. So you're getting free expert analysis here for you. So we won't hold you to anything binding, Garrett, but we appreciate your expert analysis on all this.
My pleasure.
Cool. Well, yeah, again, for a little bit of background, Garrett came on a few months ago with myself or with me and did a thought leader spotlight series interview. So go watch that if you can. If you can, go on our YouTube channel and go find that. That was phenomenal. Like gave great knowledge there. Kevin, welcome from Washington. All right. Yeah. Feel free to keep chiming in like that. And we had a great response from that conversation, Garrett. So I know it's the topic of thinking long term and of really being able to protect yourself and maximize your cash flow, and all of that is a topic that I think people need to be thinking about now more than ever. And it's something that I think for our community, it's something I know we talk a lot about, finding deals and wholesaling those deals and really kind of the lead generation side. But to think long term, I think, is an extremely important piece of the overall real estate investing strategy that we can always use more knowledge on. So I was really excited to kind of have that follow up here with you today. So again, thanks for spending your time with us.
Sure. So
awesome.
As you start growing, you want to protect at the same time. And so even if you're just starting out, Matt, you need to think about how you're going to protect your assets so you can continue to grow them. You don't want to buy that first property and lose it because you haven't set things up properly.
Yep. Yeah. And we'll dig into that today. I've got a few questions for you around that exactly as well. And then outside of that, maybe let's start off and give people some context around, who you are. I know a quick little bio about you. You're a corporate attorney and, have been involved in asset protection and being an expert in that space for 30 plus years now. I know you help real estate investors protect their assets and maximize their financial goals. And really, you're the founder of Corporate Direct, of Sutton Law Center. You're an author of books that have sold literally over 1 million books that have been sold. With you being the author of them, and that's part of the Rich Dad Poor Dad series. And I know you're really an official Rich Dad Poor Dad advisor and work directly with Robert as Robert Kiyosaki's kind of go-to attorney there. So hopefully that did a little bit of justice for you, but. Maybe
you said it well. You said it well. I couldn't do better myself. So, it has been enjoyable working with Robert Kiyosaki and his team of advisors. As I've mentioned to you, Matt, we've traveled around the world. The interest in financial education, improving your financial standing, is not just in the United States and Canada, it's worldwide. And it's been really enjoyable to see people in other countries have the same issues, the same desires, and, in need of the same type of education.
Yep. Yeah. And I think today, like, I would love for people to chime in. Rob, that's a great, great first question, but I would love for people to chime in around, asking questions on, how to protect your assets, how to de-risk your real estate investing business, tax and legal strategies to really maximize your finances. So anything around that will be relevant here. But yeah, Gary, can you kind of maybe start off? And I know on our Thought Leader series, you gave a little bit about your journey, but could you kind of reiterate for our audience today around, your journey, how you got here, any pivotal moments that you can kind of highlight for our audience just to give them, great context for this conversation?
Well, I started out, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area and went to Berkeley, and, Robert Kiyosaki's favorite school. He hounds me about going to Berkeley every time we talk. And then I went across the Bay to Hastings Law School, the University of California's law school in San Francisco. And it's interesting, you get into these classes, Matt, and I did not take the criminal law. I did not take the family law, but I sure took the corporate law. I just always liked that topic. And so when I graduated, I became a corporate attorney, and, I practiced in San Francisco and Washington, D.C. And, then I just decided, those cities were too crowded. So I moved to the great state of Nevada, the map behind us here. And Nevada is a great place for corporate law. They like Wyoming and Delaware, compete to have the best laws. And so that's part of the program is to determine what state you want to set up in. And so we talk a lot about that. Choice of state can be very important when it comes to asset protection. And so, I practiced law, and then I became associated with Robert and his team in the year 2000. So for over the last 20 years, Matt, it has been a very enjoyable and rewarding journey to be a part of the Rich Dad team and help people understand these concepts. And Robert's very clear about the fact that I am not to talk in legalese. We want to talk in a language that people can understand. The whole idea is for you to understand this, so you don't have to, pay a huge amount of money to an attorney who's going to hide the ball anyway, to understand this. So, the message is this is important, but you can get it. You're going to be able to understand it because we're going to present it in very clear terms for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'm everybody can grab their lunch, buckle up, get ready for a fun conversation here today. But that is one thing, Garrett. I've always loved the way that you really try to make things approachable, and you're very detailed in your books, like in the Loopholes of Real Estate book that you wrote. That definitely detailed great stories and all that, but it's very approachable too. So and it's funny, like you would think a book maybe covering tax and legal strategies might run the risk of being a little dry or boring or anything, but it's very engaging. Like I love your style of writing. Like you said, it's about being approachable and not trying to put up this barrier for people and saying, hey, come hire me to interpret what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, I think it would be super helpful for our audience to kind of dig into that book and talk about, even just to start with, like, you highlight real estate investing and the benefits of it and why it's such a valuable tool for building wealth. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit for us here?
Well, real estate investing provides tax advantages. It provides appreciation. Within the context of real estate investing, there are all sorts of areas that you can specialize in. I have some clients that are flipping houses. That's what works for them. I have plenty of clients who are buy and hold. And, I've been at this so many years, and I personally have invested in real estate, and you just see the benefits of time when applied to real estate. And it's been great for myself and my family. It's been great for a lot of my clients. Here we are 20 years later, and they've paid off the property. The property's appreciated. They've been able to depreciate the property. And it's just been a win all the way around for these real estate investors. So if you're getting into this, that's great. Know that you might make a few mistakes. That's okay, right? You're not going to make mistakes on a giant project. You're going to get started small, and you make your mistakes there. Don't be afraid of it. It's going to happen. It happened to me. And you overcome those. Like anything else, you overcome those mistakes, learn from them, benefit from them. And in time, you're going to be glad that you were a real estate investor.
Yeah, and I think you're right there if you're saying, hey, start small and make it approachable. So that way, when you make a mistake like that, at first it's a smaller, more controlled, risk and mistake there. So right. That's where, we talk about wholesaling, we talk about driving for dollars, we talk about a lot of these beginner strategies with that in mind of saying, hey, look for that single family home or a smaller scale investment, especially to begin with. But I think I'll dive in with a few questions I had here, but I love to see Rob's question from a few minutes ago. I'll pull that up here. He said he'd recently bought a house and was going to use BRRRR, but got an offer he couldn't refuse on land contract. Do you have any specific, with your real estate knowledge and experience, do you have any opinions on land contracts yourself?
Well, I've seen them work. It is a way to get into the thing, but I prefer to, if you can, buy the property, take it, free and clear title. But if that's your way of entry, a land contract can work. I certainly would encourage you to have an attorney review the land contract, at least the first time, so you know what some of the issues are associated with it. But in the right setting, they certainly can work.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the stuff we'll talk about today, regardless of your strategy, will still be applicable. Like we'll try to get, broad talking about, how to protect your assets, how to set up an LLC, how to maintain that, things like that will be, regardless of what your specific investing strategy is, it'll, still be applicable and good takeaways there. But, as we're rolling here, Kevin also had a specific question. And Rob was clarifying, I'm selling the house on land contract as well. So just to clarify there.
So he's the seller. So, again, I think having an attorney review that contract. The other important part is the buyer. I mean, you've got to, you may not want to sell to every buyer that comes along. I mean, a credit check on the buyer, understanding the buyer's financial situation is important in that scenario.
Yep. Yeah, I think, in your books, you also to begin with, you talk about putting together an investment plan. And, regardless of what your specific strategy is, I think that's going to apply pretty broadly. But can you maybe talk about that process, how to create an investment plan, how to create kind of your personal advisement team as it pertains to that plan? Maybe walk through that process a little bit for everybody.
Sure. Well, the team is, as you know, Matt, is very important. I mean, one of the key team members is going to be a CPA, right? I mean, you need that person who understands real estate investing. I mean, I always encourage people when they're looking for a CPA, if they're a real estate investor, it's really nice if your CPA also invests in real estate. If they've been through the same issues that you're going to go through, that is very helpful. And so if you can find that person, great. Another key player is going to be a banker, and it used to be more so, but I mean, now these bankers, I go to my local branch and there's a different guy every time. So it's hard to get that good banker on your team, but some of these banks will have private banking offices, and that may be useful to find someone who can, who is consistent, who's going to be with the same bank and can provide you with the services. Sometimes you need to get a loan really quick. And if you have a good relationship with the bank, that can be extremely useful. Another member of the team, certainly a lawyer, we set up the LLCs in all 50 states. Obviously, I'm not licensed in all 50 states. You need a real estate attorney in your local area. It's kind of like when we're talking about team, you need these people on the bench ready to come in. And so, if you have a problem with a tenant, instead of you having to scramble to find an attorney, it's nice to have that attorney on the bench. You know who to call when you have that tenant problem. So if you're getting involved in real estate in your local community, it wouldn't hurt to have met with, perhaps. Some attorneys will give you a free 15-minute consultation so that you can go in, sit down with them, take measure of them, and have someone who's on your team when that emergency arises. But this is all part, as you mentioned, Matt, of your investment plan. You need to build the team. At the start, you may not know what your favorite method of investing is. I mean, you may start with wholesaling and realize that's not for you, and maybe it's fix and flip. Plenty of my clients have done the fix and flip, and they've done such a good job that they decide to hold on to the property and rent it out. So then it becomes a buy and hold. And for a lot of people, wealth in real estate has been gained through buy and hold strategies.
For sure. Yeah. And I think we have a good mix on today watching that are maybe newbies that haven't done their first deal, but they're getting to that point, all the way up to the investors that are doing a variety of things. Like you said, maybe they're wholesaling some, went to their cash buyer list. Maybe they've got some flipping and buying hold going on, a combination like that. And they're looking to be really scale and become more efficient. So have a good mix on today, I believe. I want to get to a couple questions. So thank you again. Feel free to keep throwing questions in the chat. Anything to speak to Garrett on, how to use tax and legal strategies, how to protect your assets, how to de-risk your real estate investment business, anything like that. He'd be a great mind to weigh in on that. But Kevin here, I want to pull up. He said, in estate planning, my attorney set up my rentals as a living trust. But as I start to add more property, should I create a different entity for protection?
Well, that's a really good question, Kevin, because the living trust, it's important to realize that it does not provide asset protection. All right. The living trust is great for probate avoidance. So when you have a living trust, the trust document says, we know what we're going to do. We're smart enough to know what we're going to do. We don't need to go to court to distribute the assets. And when you go to probate court, the attorneys make out very well. So if you can avoid probate, and you can just by spending $2,000, $2,500 for a living trust, that's great. But to have your rentals titled in the name of a living trust allows you to avoid probate, but it doesn't give you the asset protection that you need. So you need to have your rentals held in one or more LLCs. All right. That gives you the asset protection. Then your LLCs are owned by your living trust. So they work together. The LLC gives you the asset protection. The living trust that owns the LLC gives you the probate avoidance. But I think that you need to get some LLCs into your structure for the asset protection.
Yep. Yeah. And I think you touched on this a bit right here for Jeffrey's question too, but Jeffrey had a similar one that I had coming in as well, was saying, hey, I have 11 properties. I have an umbrella policy to cover all of them. Do you recommend a separate entity for each, or does the umbrella policy cover it? So could you kind of reiterate that?
Yeah, sure. The umbrella policy is good, but insurance companies have an economic incentive to not cover every claim. I mean, they go out of business if they cover every claim. So let's realize that. The umbrella policy and the insurance coverage is the first line of defense. But you need that second line of defense, which are the entities. So you need to get some LLCs into the mix here. That's what I would recommend. And do you need one LLC per property? Judgment call. All right. I have plenty of clients in your situation, Jeffrey, who would say, these properties are not that expensive. I'm going to set up, instead of 11 separate LLCs, I'm going to set up 3. All right. I'll put, 3 in one, 3 in another, and the balance in the other one. So maybe 3 LLCs for 11 properties. The issue, Jeffrey, is if we use one LLC for all 11 properties, if a tenant sues over a defect at one property, they have a claim against the LLC. If the LLC owns all 11 properties, they can get the equity in all 11 properties. So we want to segregate some of those assets. We wouldn't use one LLC for 11 properties, perhaps 3. It's a judgment call, but I certainly would not use one for all 11 properties. The umbrella coverage for real estate, I had a umbrella policy for my real estate here in Reno. I found it to be fairly expensive. And so I have LLCs for each property. I have the regular insurance. I certainly have a personal umbrella policy for myself, for my home and autos. I always recommend the personal umbrella policy. But having the LLCs, I think, is more important in terms of defense than having an umbrella policy over all of those. So just, that's my recommendation.
Yeah. And he had a follow up to that as well. Does the lease and title have to be in an LLC for full protection?
Correct. So when you transfer title from your name into the LLC, that has to be done via a deed in the county recorder's office. You're going to make that transfer from you to the LLC. And then if someone sues, the LLC is on title. That's who they have a claim against, is the LLC, not you personally. Now, when you do transfer title from your name into the LLC, you haven't sold the property, right? There's no taxable event here. You've just transferred title from you to your LLC. There's no sale there. And people have this fear of, the due on sale clause. Well, you haven't sold the property. And so you're not going to pay any extra taxes. The banks have gotten much better about this. They don't attempt to call the note when you transfer title into the LLC. And the bank, look at it from their position. First of all, their position hasn't changed. It's called continuity of obligation. When you transfer title from your name into the LLC, the bank still has your personal guarantee. That doesn't go away. The bank still has a first deed of trust against the property. That doesn't go away. So there's this continuing obligation on your part to pay the bank, whether title's in your name or in the name of the LLC. I would argue that the bank is in a better position when you take title in the LLC. It's going to mean that there's less litigation, which means that the bank's position isn't challenged. So feel free to transfer title from your name into the name of your LLC. And when you do that, you're not going to use a quitclaim deed. You're going to use a grant deed or a warranty deed. That's the best way to transfer title.
Yeah. Speaking of, setting up multiple LLCs like that, Kevin actually chimed in again, chimed in asking about series LLCs. Can you kind of talk about those for a little bit here?
Yeah, we don't set up series LLCs. They're too new. Not all states offer them. And the court cases that are out there on series LLCs, the courts are very confused by them. So we don't even set them up. But the other thing to know is when you set up a series LLC, they're popular in Illinois, for example. You set up an Illinois series LLC, and the concept is that by setting up one LLC and having separate series underneath it, you have limited liability protection between the various series. And there's no court case on this. But what happens is when you borrow money for one of the series, the bank wants to take title or encumber the series, the main entity. And so you're subjecting all your series underneath the main entity to that loan. And so with banking, there have been many problems with the series LLC. I just have never taken to them. I think that 16 or 17 states now approve them. When we have 50 states approving the series LLC and an understanding of this idea of the internal shield of liability actually working, then we'll do it. But I am not a fan of the series LLC.
Yeah, and I think fantastic questions here. Thank you for community chiming in here. Anything around, again, how to tax and legal strategies, how to protect your assets, de-risking your assets, or de-risking your business, things like that. Feel free to keep throwing questions in the chat here. But we kind of brushed over this a little bit, but I think your book does a great job of just talking about how to incorporate properly, or multiple books that you've written touch on that subject. So can you maybe give some best practices about how how to best incorporate, how to really maintain your LLCs, how to think through that properly, and what maybe are some common mistakes that investors may or may not have?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Matt, because, you know, we've tested these other services that for $99 will get you fully protected. And so for $99, you get one piece of paper that says you're incorporated in Wyoming. And then for the other piece of paper you get is the invoice for $99. Well, you need more than that, right? You need not only the articles of organization, you need an operating agreement, which is the roadmap for how the LLC is going to work. You need minutes of the first meeting. You need to issue membership certificates. If the IRS ever comes calling and you don't have the membership certificates issued, that's a big problem. And people on the internet say, oh, the LLC is so flexible, you don't need all this stuff. Well, they're not operating in the real world. You do need all these things. And so when you set up the LLC, you're going to have the operating agreement, the articles, the minutes, the membership certificates issued. You need to get the EIN number so you can open up a separate bank account. You definitely need a separate bank account. And the reason we're doing all these things is they have what are called corporate formalities. And these are requirements that if you're going to set up a corporation or an LLC, the state's giving you a charter of limited liability. In order to keep that charter, you have to follow these formalities on an ongoing basis. And Matt, too often people forget to do this or forget to pay that fee, and you're putting your entire protection at risk because you have to. There are these very easy. They're easy to do. It's what happens when you don't follow them that's pretty dramatic. You lose your personal unlimited liability protection or limited liability protection, and you all of a sudden become personally responsible for what happens inside the LLC. So it's very important to set it up right at the start. You're going to pay more than $99, let me tell you, if you're going to do it right. And set it up right at the start. Then every year, follow these formalities, and then you'll be fine. It's interesting, Matt. When people try to pierce the veil, in other words, someone is owed money by the corporation or the LLC, they don't have the money. And so they say, well, the corporation didn't follow the formalities. We're going to pierce through the corporation and reach the shareholder or the member of the LLC. How often do you think this is successful? In what percentage of the time is this successful?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would guess often.
50%.
There you go. Yeah.
Half the time people pierce the veil and get through to the shareholder because people don't follow the formalities. So you need someone on your team that realizes the importance of these formalities. That's my next book, Matt, is on piercing the corporate veil. I'm in the middle of writing it right now. So nice. I'm very well aware of these issues.
I like the preview here. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, the preview.
Yep.
That's what I was going to ask is, do you have any, obviously when the book comes out, start there. But in the meantime, do you have any other great places for people to go to maintain that and understand the checklist of what they need to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, on our website, we talk about this. You can go to corporatedirect.com and we have reports and articles and a free newsletter. And our job is to keep people up to date on this field because it's a dynamic field. Things change all the time in the world of asset protection. And so you have to keep up on it. And that's one of my jobs that, I'm reading the cases and I'm following things. And if something kind of earth-shattering or new or different comes up, we'll put it in a newsletter.
Yeah. I mean, you all put out great content. Like you've got, again, the books, the YouTube, you've got a variety of different channels you're sharing your knowledge with. So highly recommend. We'll try to throw links to all those things in the description here as well, but highly recommend checking all of that out for continuing to educate yourself about this.
Good.
I see a good question here. So we have MLB Property Group said, should I wholesale deals into trust?
No, I wouldn't. Certainly you can use an LLC for wholesaling, but a trust, when I think of a trust, it's like the living trust that holds your assets. And so if you're and there's no asset protection with a living trust. So if you're wholesaling deals through your living trust and you get sued, you're giving the person suing a straight shot into all your other assets. So we don't want to do that. There are some spendthrift trusts, irrevocable trusts, which means you can't change them. And they're just not suited for wholesaling. I think with wholesaling, you want some flexibility, and the LLC offers that for you. If you wholesale in your individual name as well, just know that if something goes bad, you're going to be sued personally. So I like the thought of having another entity, but a trust for me is not the right one.
Fair. Yeah. And my team chimed in here reminding me that we have links to all of your books in the description already. So they're already a step ahead. But yeah, for sure. Continue to, again, if you subscribe to your newsletter to continue to get timely news, this is always evolving, obviously. So great. Well, again, feel free, community, to chime in, ask questions around anything on how to protect your assets, how to de-risk your business, tax, legal strategies. I would love to spend a little bit of time on the tax strategy portion, just because I think your loopholes book gives great feedback, great insight into that. But and obviously your talks and other things like that, cover that as well. But could you maybe talk about some common mistakes in that tax strategy area that investors should be aware of there, or things that they're possibly missing, commonly?
Well, one thing is kind of an issue now is the real estate professional, whereby you can have perhaps one spouse who isn't working. Let's say the husband has a W-2 and is a doctor and has a lot of income, and the wife can be the real estate professional, or vice versa. And you put in 750 hours a year working on real estate matters. That's over half your time. And then you're able to shelter the husband's ordinary income via the real estate. The IRS has gotten, there was a flood of these real estate professional returns that came in. And so the IRS is scrutinizing the time that you're spending as a real estate professional. So that has become sort of a red flag for the IRS. Not to say it can't be done, but you've got to be pretty meticulous in keeping track of your hours that you have worked as a real estate professional. For many of my clients, Matt, that they'll set up a corporation or an LLC, either one taxed as an S corp, so we can minimize payroll taxes, but they'll have an actual entity to do the real estate professional activities through. It just adds a little bit more certainty to it. So that's one issue. Who knows what changes are coming out of Washington with regard to taxation and real estate. There's been talk of getting rid of the 1031 exchange, which would be a huge change to the real estate sector. They're talking about getting rid of perhaps a step up in basis when you pass. Right now, if you bought the property for $100,000 and now it's worth $1 million, and you gift it to your kids upon your passing, your kids get the basis of $1 million. They don't have to pay tax on the $900,000 difference. They're talking about perhaps changing that. So, I'm not really good with the crystal ball, but I think there could be some significant tax changes coming to the real estate world. And so again, this is an issue that you need to keep up on. I'm sure, Matt, you'll keep people informed, but our newsletter will as well.
Yeah, that's why we keep having you on. This is great.
Right.
Yeah, in your loopholes of real estate book specifically as well, I think there are a couple things you outlined there around around what those loopholes are that new investors should be aware of and should know, like, hey, here's why real estate is so appealing. Could you maybe speak to that a little bit as well for our audience?
Well, depreciation is the big one. The ability to write off the value of the building over 27 or 39 years, whatever it is for that type of property. But this is the idea is that real estate wears out, and it does, right? And so the IRS gives you the ability to write off a percentage of the value of the real estate over a period of years. And now they don't let you write off the land because, unless you're on the cliff in California, the land's not going anywhere. So you can't write off the land portion, but you can write off the construction portion. And so you're going to work with your CPA to make sure you're taking advantage of depreciation every year. And then if you have certain elements that are not really real estate related, but are more short-term items like refrigerators and carpets, you can do what's called a cost segregation study and write off those elements at an even faster rate. So again, a CPA is a key member of your team because it's great if they invest in real estate, even better, but you want them to be able to take advantage of depreciation, of cost segregation, so that you can really maximize the return on your real estate investments.
Yeah, for those CPAs, do you have any kind of qualifying questions that you ask, or anything they really kind of vet and understand, that they really know their stuff within the investing space?
Do you invest in real estate?
That's simple enough.
A key question.
Yeah. Easy.
But some don't, and that's fine, and they'd be able to still take advantage of depreciation, cost segregation. But it just, for me, if they're in the same milieu I am, if they're dealing with their own real estate investments, that's good. Yep,
that's fair. Is there, and just out of curiosity too, I know you obviously practice in a variety of spaces, but what makes you particularly passionate about working with real estate investors specifically?
That's a good question because I didn't grow up. My family didn't invest in real estate. My dad worked for the government. And so that was just not part of something that we talked about as kids. But I guess it was by the time I was in my 20s and 30s, I was kind of looking around. This is long before Rich Dad, but I was kind of looking around and just seeing that people who invested in real estate were doing okay. And so, I've certainly taught my kids that my kids know that they're going to be investing in real estate. So, the benefits are there. I mean, even though we may have some changes in Washington, they're not going to take away the key benefits of owning real estate. That would be suicidal. The government many years ago, Matt, finally came to the realization that they're not good at providing housing. We had all these government housing projects and they were a disaster. And so they changed the tax code to encourage the private investor to provide housing. They do a much better job of it. They're much more efficient at it than the government. And I just don't see those incentives going away.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a almost 5-year-old, almost 3-year-old, almost 1-year-old. So I'm trying to instill, some good advice for them at some point in the future here too. So, appreciate you here, you telling me about your journey and I'm taking notes over here too.
Well, for the kids, Robert Kiyosaki's game, Cash Flow for Kids, is a great way for these kids to learn about the importance of, investing and real estate and all that. So it can be taught at a young age and good for you if you can start teaching your kids that.
Love it. Yeah. Great. Well, with the last 10 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes here, just a reminder to everybody, feel free to chime in with any other questions around anything tax or legal focused, and Gary can help give his perspective as well. But, the last little area I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit was, and this is something you've talked about a little bit already, but kind of de-risking strategies and really thinking ahead and being proactive around, just avoiding any kind of litigation. And I know you've talked about hey, we live in a very litigious day and age currently. So do you have any advice for new investors about being proactive on de-risking their real estate investments?
Well, treat people fairly. Litigation comes about when, people aren't treated fairly. Now, we do have people in our society who you can treat them fairly and they're still, for some reason, they're wired to fight. And so screening tenants is really important these days. And, you know, in certain cities in California now, it's impossible to evict someone. And so, you know, you want to invest in a city and a state that appreciates that real estate owners are providing a very useful public service. But some of these, like in Oakland, it's very hard to evict anyone. So, you know, I think where you're going to invest plays a key part in all of this. So you want to invest in the right areas. You want to realize that it is a litigious business. People do sue. And so you want to have these LLCs in place. You don't want to have a living trust to protect you. There's no protection there. You need to set up that LLC. And again, you need to maintain that LLC so that you can stay protected. Those are some key foundational points. Now, if you're going to be wholesaling, you're not owning the real estate. You're just getting in the middle of the transaction. You can do that in your individual name, but I think you have a better, it's a better look to operate through the LLC. The LLC will give you a little bit more protection than if you're doing things in your individual name. But then when you take title to real estate, you really want to have title in the name of the LLC instead of your name personally. Yep.
Yeah. And speaking on wholesaling here, David had a question asking, can I do two businesses under one LLC, like tech consulting as for online businesses, as well as my wholesaling?
You can. You know, once the tech consulting, if it becomes really lucrative and you have a lot of receivables, you wouldn't want the wholesaling business. You wouldn't want to get sued on a wholesaling transaction where they have a bridge into your receivables from the tech consulting business. So at the start, to save money, sure. But I think at some point when you have a really robust business and you have a separate side business that can be involved in litigation, I would separate those two out.
Smart. You also touched on 1031s briefly there, but Kevin had a question asking, hey, you know, I'm going to go through 1031. You know, what should I be looking for in an agent or average cost, you know, for this fall?
You know, I think the costs, I've used a couple different 1031 companies, and the costs have been fairly standard. So, you know, I would shop around. If you get a quote of $3,000, I mean, there's some that are, you know, $800, so or less. So I might shop around, but I think there's competition within that space. So you should find companies that are you know, good, but also competitively priced. One of the things you want to make sure is that the 1031 company has a segregated account for your monies. You don't want them lumping them all into one big account. What's happened in the past is there's been litigation or problems, and everybody's money that was held in trust was lost. This was about 10 years ago in a 1031 exchange company. So to make sure that the 1031 exchange company has your monies in a segregated account, that would be important.
Yep. Great. Well, I'll give one last call here for any final questions to chime in. Garrett, I really enjoy doing this with you. I appreciate your time, and it looks like you know, people definitely enjoyed it as well. So we have all of the links to your books in the description. Again, go to their website and sign up for their newsletter to really understand the evolving, you know, trends in this space, because there's always new stuff and new legislation coming out that affects all of us as well. But Garrett, I just want to say thank you. Really appreciate your time. And then can you maybe tell people, you know, where they can get in touch with you, you know, how they can learn more from you or work with you?
Yeah, the main website, Matt, is corporatedirect.com. And you can go on there and schedule a free 15-minute phone consultation with one of our paralegals. And we'll get on the phone and explain our services and see if there's a fit. So we do take on new clients, and we're happy to give a free 15-minute consultation to explain our services. And so, you know, we'd be happy to talk to any of your guys, Matt, to further assist them.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know, if you want one-on-one help, go there. Outside of that, we'll keep taking advantage of your free knowledge as long as you'll let us here too. So again, thank you so much for coming on, and really appreciate the time.
My pleasure, Matt. Thanks.
Thanks. And everybody, again, this is Matt Camp with DealMachine, and happy deal finding.